Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Despite the fact that OpTic Texas have confirmed they are sticking their full roster going into next season, they have indeed confirmed that personnel changes may indeed be on the way, looking for an analyst to join their roster of Rambo and Sender on the coaching staff. But also, with all the rumours as to what might have happened behind the scenes, Crimsix has given his perspective on what he might have heard, saying that iLLeY was the one to get forced out and Dashy defended him, and that's where the team has stuck together fundamentally. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you are new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Really upset the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. Loads of new support the last couple of days. If you haven't yet subscribed, at least take a quick look at the red button. First of all, this from Sparks. Got a little dopamine for the mailbox today. Thought this was cool actually. They've done effectively an MVP trophy here. Now the design I believe is identical to the one they did for the actual winners. Thought it'd be kind of nice if the designs were somewhat different for the MVPs, but still pretty interesting about the MVPs eventually get a trophy for their performances this season. Spart of course being the most surprising MVP of the season for that Major 2 victory. Now I wanted to dive into the Warzone drama a little bit more because it has been continuing. Nameless of course has the following to say about the whole Scump solo YOLO thing, but maybe that's not the greatest example in the world of this kind of phenomenon. This is pretty funny from Crim as well actually, because I believe he went out to a track day, but he just replied to this tweet and then came back a few hours later realizing he'd ratioed this guy. The CDL players must have forgot I was the greatest SD player of all time. This is unrational. And Crim's like, yeah, I forgot, that's for damn sure. Who even is this guy? Even Clay says this whole CDL versus Warzone players stuff, give either players a year on either side and they're competing at the pro level. Harder in the CDL because you need networking to get to the top, whereas in Warzone you can just be dominant and get invited to tournaments. It's all Call of Duty at the end of the day. So I think an interesting statement here from Clayster. I thought it was interesting as well, there was some discussion on the fact that like, look, okay, Scump, he went to Warzone, he won this tournament, and obviously he's a CDL pro, and the caliber of players, like I would say is higher in the CDL, at least in terms of raw ability, than it is in Warzone. But at the end of the day, if you are a Scump nowadays and you're coming up as a 16-year-old Scump, what's he going to be playing to try and make it as a Call of Duty pro? Is he going to be playing GBs to try and be in the CDL, or is he going to be playing Warzone to try and make all the money and do that, right? Fact of the matter is, a Scump of today that's trying to come up is probably playing Warzone, right? Which just goes to show how the kind of scene has changed over the years. But regardless of who's right, who's wrong, I just want to see an actual matchup between the two of them. Even this from Simp I thought was pretty funny here when he says, you know, talking to Huskers and Aiden and the like, didn't you guys try and play the Cold War kickoffs that got absolutely slammed on, or were those the other Warzone players, right? So Simp is not holding back at all. He's dropping his teammate on his neck, and now he's just absolutely trying to smoke these guys on Twitter. And even this from Crone, right? Warzone players when they outplayed KSI Fan 2018 and Soccer Dad 1989. Thought that was pretty good as well. So, I mean, yeah, there's been lots of good memes flying around over the last couple of days. This then from Hitch is his proposal on the Warzone idea to try and get the CDL to play the Warzone guys. Now, hopefully this does happen sooner rather than later, trying to get the funding sorted. I believe FaZe even came out and said they eventually just wanted to copy this idea. Maybe they saw Hitch's tweet, maybe they didn't, but they were also thinking of setting up a similar thing. Do a hardpoint game 1, do like a 2 versus 2 odd man game 2, then gunfight, rebirth, search and destroy. Would be kind of interesting between them. There might be updates and changes to this, right? But the whole Warzone versus CDL pros drama has been pretty good the last couple of days. Hopefully it does kind of culminate in an event coming up sooner rather than later. And this also just said, well, as OpTic were tweeting out, I thought it was only a matter of time until people tweeted this out, to be honest, when Nastie, the kind of pub stomping guys and back in the Black Ops 2 days, was saying that, oh yeah, they can take on the pros. They played them in, well, as you can see here, the Yemen hardpoints. And this is honestly is hilarious. It was Rambo, you know, Big Team, Merc, and Karma. They're playing, well, just having a good time here, and they just completely destroy these guys. I mean, it's honestly kind of embarrassing to watch. They got 12-point clubbed. It's 250 to 12. The pro team just absolutely decimated them, and Karma's laying down on the hardpoint here, just swirling around in his chair, just collecting all the free time. Like, I mean, yeah, 250 to 12. That was what happened before. Nowadays, probably a slightly different story, but still, that was that's kind of the original pub stomper versus kind of CDL pros thing, where the pub stompers thought they could hang, and unfortunately weren't really up to the task. Nowadays, it might be a slightly different story with the Warzone side. They probably know of this event and don't want to get embarrassed in quite this way yet again. Another funny thing to mention actually is kind of Formal says, what exactly makes one a Warzone pro? Is there a list of all the pro players? Actually curious. And he actually Googles right here, list of Warzone pros, and he finds, okay, Huskers, Dr. Disrespect, Shroud, even Nick Merckx, Closey, Tifu, Dr. Lupo stuff, and the top of the list is Scump, right? So Scump is actually considered like a Warzone pro, because I mean, look, he played Warzone tournaments, won a lot of money doing it, so I suppose that does qualify Scump in that way. So kind of funny how Scump, despite being a CDL player, is the #1 Warzone pro according to Google. I do it all, man, he says here in the replies. Let's dive then into what exactly is going on the OpTic side. To Rambo, he gave a little bit more insight last night into what happened internally within the team. He definitely made a few interesting statements, actually. I will definitely share one of them for you guys here in just a second, where he talked about the fact that, like, the team changes they were considering were nothing to do with kind of play style, right? And that's the thing with FaZe as it seems right now that the main AR, the flex, maybe the conflict there isn't exactly been ideal, and therefore they're deciding to try and upgrade their roles to a certain extent. That was never the thing with OpTic, which I think we presumed. It was more out-of-game stuff. Was it Dashy not turning up on time? You know, was it whatever? We don't really know. We're never probably going to hear the full story, but Rambo does confirm that it was kind of internal team dynamics that were the problem rather than playstyle, which of course is probably what we presumed, but it's pretty much the only thing that he said on the matter because he doesn't want to go into much detail between probably the conflict that was there between, you know, Rambo, Shotzzy, even maybe Dashy, right? Because it seems like Dashy found out very last minute and then all of a sudden they decided to get together and turn things around. It's kind of crazy to me, the fact that iLLeY and Dashy were getting dropped and were announced to get dropped, and then like 24, 48 hours later, they were all of a sudden okay again. I have no idea what the turnaround was internally, but like I have a hard time believing there's no friction internally still remaining as a result of that. Now, this is the other part that I'll talk about before we discuss what actually might have gone on internally, is that they're in discussions to sign an analyst to their team. Of course, it is interesting. We see that a lot of the top teams, especially the likes of FaZe, they've got Crowder, EasyMac, of course, being their analyst, and then RJ as their kind of assistant coach effectively. And other teams like Toronto and even Minnesota, like they've got pretty extensive coaching staffs. A lot of these teams have also brought on analysts as well. And it can be difficult, especially if you're a guy like Rambo. Like Cinder is probably a more, like he's probably focused a little bit more on the search and destroy side of things. Rambo is generally, I suppose, the man management guy. And it seems like there's a lot of work like that to be done on this team, at least the last, well, season or so. And he said it took years of his life. So like those guys working on what they're working on can't necessarily go to all the effort of tracking all the analytics and the statistics for their team in scrims, and also for all the other teams in the league. Okay, like how are they doing on this rotation to this rotation? Like these are things that you can't really track unless you have someone that's dedicated to do it, right? You've got to have someone that sits there and says, okay, you know, how much time do we get on the P1 in scrims against this team? How good is our rotation for P1 to P2? Is that where we're losing time compared to the league average? This type of stuff. Like that information is actually pretty critical, and you see the top teams generally invest in analysts to make that happen. Now, apparently OpTic are looking to do exactly the same thing.
The analyst thing is in discussion. Yes, there's this offseason isn't over yet for me. I mean, dude, it's not even an offseason. I feel like, simply put, the decisions were never about anything. Like for anyone involved, the decisions were never about anything on the playing front. Like I think that's simple enough for you guys, because I've seen some on Twitter, like, and I'll say that just for the mentality of like everyone needs to get a grip and understand that there's more to winning than just playing the game. Period.
No, of course, some would question, okay, who actually is the analyst going to be? I also shared that clip when Rambo said that it was kind of internal stuff that was causing the issue rather than role dynamics. But even as well, Scrumintel says, guys, Haggy isn't an analyst, lol. They want someone to be tracking the stats and putting them together for the team. And Haggy says yes. So, I mean, look, who knows, right? Haggy, of course, is going to be in discussions with many teams. I'm sure he's potentially talked to OpTic or potentially talked to other teams as well. No, like, I think he does want to be more of a coaching role. I'm not sure he necessarily fits the bill of the analyst that OpTic are looking for, and probably would want to join another team and have more of a lead role, but there might be other possibilities here for the OpTic guys, especially because JP Krez, formerly of the New York Subliners, is now on the market as an analyst for that team as well. So we'll see how that one goes. Cam Allen, of course, another option that's done good things with London, even though I'm not exactly sure whether he's free or whether he's not. Some mixed messages in tweets there the last couple of days, but I mean, yes, Doug says I had to go over this view, and Crim replies, I wore a wire for this view. I thought it was pretty funny as well, but Crimsix had a few words to say on what he believes went on behind the scenes in the OpTic camp. Of course, look, he has experience playing with pretty much all of those guys. Well, actually, yeah, all of those guys, like every single person on the OpTic team Crim has played with at some time or another, and saying he has an indication as to what might have been happening here. And I've heard a couple of different stories as what happened within the OpTic camp, but one of them definitely aligns with what Crimsix is saying in this situation. Dashy did kind of confirm on stream that he was never going to leave OpTic, but that doesn't necessarily mean he didn't vouch for iLLeY in this situation. So my understanding is here really they were probably looking to get rid of iLLeY just because the thumb injury, the question marks around it, and they thought, look, we probably maybe can't risk it. Like, yes, iLLeY brings a lot to the team, we can't necessarily risk it, so we've probably got to try and get rid of iLLeY and look for other options like Cammy or like changing the roles around, bringing in Hydra, whatever the case might potentially be, Scump to the flex, whatever. Like, that was the consideration. And then Dashy was going to get gone as well due to internal friction, as Rambo was just describing. Then, okay, Scump comes back to the holiday, says, all right, lads, like, what should we actually do here? And then talks with the team internally. And this is what Crimsix believes happens next.
Okay. I think they didn't really want to get rid of Brandon, but they probably wanted to get rid of Ender. And Brandon saved Ender. Threw his ass of one of those cruise ship life rings, you know? And Brandon, listen, if that's the truth and if that's what happened, just know that number one, I'm a genius, all right? I'm some six-headed mother. And just know that if that's what happened, I'm proud of you.
So we know how highly iLLeY is rated by Dashy, right? And we even saw just the other day on his stream that he did right before he got dropped, and it seemed like he was blindsided by the move that he was getting dropped here. But like right in that stream, he actually said the fact that iLLeY was so impactful to the team, does so much for the team that people don't see inside the game, outside of the game. The system they created that allowed them to bring in Prolutes and have good success initially was all down to iLLeY, right? So maybe like the team was thinking, well, can we really risk this whole iLLeY situation and bringing him back again? But then Dashy was sitting there thinking, well, look, if we want to get rid of iLLeY, what are we going to do? And there's just like, iLLeY fits our team so well that it's worth the risk, right? Might have been what Dashy was arguing. So then, okay, we can't guarantee 100% that iLLeY's going to be okay next season, but if the team wants to play with him and Dashy's given him his full support and being like, well, look, if iLLeY's not here, then I don't really want to be part of this project either, right? And that could have been what Dashy said, and that would have been quite the statement for Dashy to make. Now, look, at the end of the day, even if Dashy did say that and gave his full support to iLLeY and was like, look, we're building around iLLeY or I'm going to leave, if they had still have dropped iLLeY, like, would they have got rid of, like, would Dashy have actually left at the end of the day? Would he have left the organization that he, loves and has been a part of for many years at this point? Seems unlikely, but Dashy's kind of support in that sense definitely will carry a significant amount of weight. If Dashy said to the team and to Rambo and the coaching staff and to Scump and Shotzzy, like, look, we're not doing this team without iLLeY, then they would have been like, well, okay, we can't really get rid of Dashy, right? So I suppose we'll just run it back with iLLeY as it is. And maybe the case, as Crimsix was mentioning there, was indeed true, that, and I think there's been differing stories that I've heard about this, but there definitely is a possibility this aligns rather well with the reality that, indeed Dashy kind of saved iLLeY in this sense for having to go elsewhere. Now, look, if that is indeed the case, and Dashy is kind of the key feature in keeping iLLeY around on this team, what does that mean for the internal team chemistry, right? Because this is the big question to me about this season, is that obviously there was serious issues in that team. Like, they were going to drop these guys, they announced them getting dropped. Dashy and iLLeY seemingly were blindsided by the news and were completely caught off guard by the news they were getting dropped. And then all of a sudden they're back on the team again, and now as Scump says, everything's 100% okay, there's no bad blood at all. Like, okay, there might not be any bad blood on the surface, but one thing goes wrong and one tournament doesn't go your way, and once again the vetoes start to, maybe Rambo makes another bad veto decision, and all of a sudden all that tension that was there this season is now back on the surface again. So I think the issue is with this team now is that yes, they might stick together, but the fact of the matter is, if iLLeY's really only there because Dashy wanted to keep him around, I don't think that's the only reason, right? But if Dashy had have said no to iLLeY, I think he would probably have gone. And given the way the dynamics are now working on that team, I think the fuse of the team is now a lot shorter, right? I don't think that they can survive another season of the stresses that they had this year without blowing it up, right? I think that they had a pretty long fuse before, now that fuse is shorter. If their results don't deliver early on, then that team I don't think that team is long for this world, to be honest. So I think that's kind of the concern that they have. But as we've talked about, they know the ceiling, they know what they can do, but I think they've got to deliver on it early or these issues could recur again. And maybe an analyst on the team is what OpTic need to do exactly that. This thought was kind of interesting here from JP Kress, because definitely a potential target for OpTic if they want to bring in an analyst to their team. He's actually mentioning here the fact that, pacing might be one of the biggest buzzwords. Everyone loves talking about pacing. Well, the pacing was off on this team. This guy's too fast. This guy's too slow. And even as Clay says, like, every team that isn't performing has pacing issues. Just such a generalized statement. So, bit of an interesting one. People giving their thoughts on whether pacing actually has any meaning as a word in terms of a descriptor, or whether it's just, just a word that people use to describe teams that aren't doing particularly well. Like, no one really says that teams that are good have good pacing. They use like other things like to describe why they're good, but a bad team that people don't really know why they're bad, they just say they've got bad pacing even if they've got talented players on it. And Arcitys kind of says this. Thought was kind of interesting just because maybe that was one of the reasons he was, of course pure speculation, but maybe that was one of the reasons he was given internally as to why they're dropping him. Maybe his teammates told him, yeah, you've got bad pacing, Alec, it's time to go. And then maybe he's like, what does that word even mean at the end of the day? But yes, very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit on the like button, tell us the YouTube gods, this is a good video, others like you should see it as well, and help grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.